Hi, welcome to the Write Review and our special Women's Month special event. We are so glad that you are here. I am Nola Nash, and I'm hosting this particular event. I want to give Annie McDonald full credit for putting this amazing group of women together, and the camaraderie here before the show has been amazing, and letting them kind of chat for a while amongst themselves. Anytime that we do a live show, that's one of my favorite parts, is actually the chatting that goes on with the guests before we actually go live. And it's been so nice hearing these ladies, getting to chat for a while, getting to meet virtually, getting to find some things that they have in common, sharing stories. And that's what we're doing here today. We are going to talk to some amazing authors who have great stories to tell about life, about finding their career as a writer, and perhaps coming to that a bit later in their life, and just the journey that took them there, because that story is as important as the stories that find their way between the pages of their books. So we're going to talk to these fantastic women today. So we're going to start, and if you've watched the Second Line show, I only know how to do things pretty much stuff. So we always this is how I go. This is how I keep track of things. Always this way. So Grace, we're going to start with you. Would you like to please introduce yourself? Tell the folks at home and those of everybody watching on the Write Review a little bit about yourself and what you are, why you're here. What's going on? Hi. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Nola. And definitely a special shout out to Annie for having put this together for all of us. So I'm Grace Sammon, and I just had my debut novel. It's my fourth book. So I'm not necessarily a new author, but I'm definitely new to the world of novels. And so the world of education and the world of novels are very, very different in terms of how we write, in terms of how we promote our books. And the story of my Eves is very much a story about transformation. It's a story about a woman in the later half of her life and discovering herself through the stories of older women. And in some ways that's autobiographical for many of us as we transition into another half, quarter, whatever of our lives. So it's great to be here, and I'm so honored to be with the other authors today as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wonderful introduction. Great job. It's like you've done that before. Maybe you've done one or two of these live events before. All right. So Liza, Nash, Taylor, you are next in our Brady Bunch thing going this way. Introduce yourself to the folks.
Hi. Sorry, my dog's just a second started barking.
They're trying to steal the show.
Yeah. Thank you, Nola, for hosting us, and to Annie for setting this all up. I'm so thrilled to be here with this august group. I write historical fiction, and I have two books. That's the first, came out last August. This is second, is coming out this August. I don't know how many people are launching two books during the pandemic, but I'm doing that. And so I'm a debut author and started very, very late. My first book is set in 1924. Both of these books are set here at the Virginia farmhouse where I'm sitting, which was built about 1825. And I don't know why I started writing historical fiction. I love history. I love doing the research. But I'm working on a third book now that's set in the early 50s. And that just sort of seems to be where I ended up. It ended up being my genre. So thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
You're welcome. Glad that you are here. So in true Brady Bunch style, we're going down to Patricia's hands because we just want to make this circle. It's easier for me to keep track. Okay. I don't want to leave anybody out. I've had a long school day. This is how I keep track of my kids too. So just so you know, this is how we do it.
Okay, well, thanks, Nola. It's always a pleasure to be on the Second Line show or the Write Review. And as everyone has said, we're missing Annie McDonald today, and thanking her for bringing us all together. It's always a pleasure to be chatting with Annie and with you, Nola. I too started my career in writing quite by accident, and 10 years ago I published my first novel, which was The Bridge Club. I've just published or re-released the 10-year anniversary edition. And I segued from that book, which surprisingly turned me into an author, into writing books set in the south of France. And that's basically what I'm known for. And, writing just became a part of my life that in this, later stage, certainly not the latter stage, but
I like that clarification.
yeah. And it's just been a great journey and a lot of fun. And the best part is meeting readers and other authors. The writing community is so amazing, so collaborative and supportive, and it's all been a wonderful experience. And I'm very proud to be part of it, and proud to be here with all of you ladies today.
I have found that to be true too. It's a very, very welcoming community. It really is. As you know, when I launched my first book, that was one of the things that I was absolutely terrified of, was getting in there with other authors and feeling like I didn't belong. I was the new kid. I didn't know what was going on. And it is the opposite of any of that feeling. The longer that I'm here, the warmer the room feels with all of these wonderful people that I've had the opportunity to meet and get to know. And of course, you ladies sitting here are, among the pantheon of, those who can give wisdom on not just work and writing, but life and advice on all those things that you need to do to just be true to who you are and what you write. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you. And one lady who inspires me every time she posts a picture of her skiing is Miss Sandell Morse, because there is no way you would get me on skis. And lady, let me tell you, I'm in awe every time. We got Patricia over here skiing. We got Sandell over here skiing. I'm sitting on the couch with my dog. I start to feel real inadequate. I may be able to hang with you guys author-wise, but I'm starting to really, I've got some catching up to do in the outdoor world. Sandell, tell us all a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much, Nola. I'm kind of amazed. I'm still skiing too, but I am. And I was on the second line with you, and it was just such a wonderful experience. I'm delighted to be here. I'm missing Annie. Believe it or not, I've never been on a show with her, and I hope that happens one day soon. So I published my debut memoir, The Spiral Shell, A French Village Reveals Its Secrets of Jewish Resistance in World War II, in April of 2020. So that was right in the pandemic. Now, this is my debut memoir, but I've been a writer for quite a few years. I didn't start until middle age, and I had no idea what difference it would make to actually publish a book. I published in the literary magazines for years and years and years. But I've come into an absolutely wonderful, delightful writing community, as everyone says. It has been so supportive, and especially during the pandemic. So I am very, very grateful to be here. I think writing is my third career. I started out when I was very, very young as a dancer. I was a teacher for years and years. And it was when I went back to school in middle age for a Master of Arts in Liberal Studies that I just simply fell down into writing and have been writing ever since.
I love that. Third career. I mean, we can just transform ourselves anytime we want to. I love that message. Just keep doing what you want to do, whatever that is. Just go find it. Go do it. I love it. And Miss Cassandra King-Conroy, it is an honor to meet you. You are definitely a new face to me, but not a new name. And so it is absolutely a joy to have you on this show. And I'm so glad that Annie was able to put you in this amazing group of women. I know we're all very excited to meet you too. So tell the folks at home a little bit about you and your work.
Well, I'm delighted to be here as well. And I've already discovered some new books and new authors that I'm anxious to look up. And it sounds like that we all have one thing in common, unless I missed somebody, is that we maybe started our writing careers at least middle-aged or even beyond. I had been writing for a while, and as Sandell said, had published in literary journals and things like that, and really and truly was not real ambitious about doing a novel. when I did my first novel was actually my master's thesis when I went back to school, as some of the rest of you said, and it was to be a collection of short stories because that's all I had. Novels just seemed overwhelming to me because I just loved them.
Yes.
I love James Michener. Gives you an idea.
That would be an intimidating hard to reach, wouldn't it?
And so, I just thought that was overwhelming. But I did my first novel, and once I did that, I never looked back. So I have 5 novels now, and I have really 2 books of fiction. One of them nonfiction. I'm sorry. I hesitate to even call it a book because it's about 30-something pages, and it's a commencement speech I've given on several occasions. And for whatever reason, my publisher wanted to publish. But then
must have been a fantastic speech. That doesn't happen to too many people. Let's publish your commencement speech. That's pretty awesome.
Well, it was humorous instead of, like so many deadly dull commencement speeches.
Yes.
But my latest book that came out right before the pandemic, 2019, just late November, is my first memoir. And when I was 50, I met Pat Conroy, and in a couple of years we were married. And so this book, Pat died. It was 5 years ago this March, and a couple of weeks ago made it 5 years. So not long after he died, I didn't really sit down to start writing a memoir. Maybe I had thought in the back of my head that I would eventually, living with another writer and such a well-known writer and so forth as Pat. And he was a wonderful character. He was as much a character in person as any of his, characters in his book.
Yeah.
But I guess it was sort of therapeutic in that I began, writing our story, and that's why I call it Tell Me a Story.
I love that, and what a great tribute to Pat too. And so many people have such great memories and great connections and favorite quotes of Pat Conroy, and you get to share something different, something a bit more special, something other people may not know, even if they have had that personal connection with him. And what a wonderful tribute, and especially a gift not only to his memory, but also to those people who think so highly of him and like his work so much that it's a gift to them, to the readers and his fans as well, to have that special story or special story. So what a great book. So ladies, you've all come to this later in your lives. You've had other experiences. It's been a journey that brought you here. And everyone's story is a little different, except for the fact, like Cassandra said, that, oh, look, Annie popped in. Hi. I was wondering if she was going to pop in. Sometimes she does. So There we go. I know she's super excited to see you on here, Cassandra. And look.
Hi, Annie.
We've got Andera is getting teary listening to you. So we've got lots of folks here from all over the place. Andera said she would never forget meeting Pat when she was a reporter in Dayton. So what great memories that people have, and what a special gift that you've given them in that book. So how awesome. We've got Mary Sheriff who's here. Hi, Mary. She's here from Virginia. Carla's here from Alabama. Were you down in those storms, Carla? Because I think you sent them to me. I can hear the rain on my window. And Lisa coming in from Texas. We've got folks from all over that are joining us. And folks saying hello to Annie now. There we go, Carla saying hey to Annie. And we've got Julie here. So we've got lots of folks who are tuning in to hear your stories and all of those great journeys that brought you here. So we're looking at writing as a career and a career later in life. So what types of things, we heard education. I mean, I totally can see that. I mean, education. Sandell was a dancer as well. I mean, we've got interesting pre-careers. How did those careers take you to this career as a writer? I mean, what does that journey look like? They're all different, but you all landed in the same place. So how does that happen for you guys? I'm asking because I'm a teacher who would like to be a full-time writer. So those of you with teacher stories, speak up. Tell me how this works. Listening with bated breath.
Yeah. Well, I was a teacher for a couple of years, but not nearly in the same extreme situation that you're in, Nola, dealing with children during the pandemic and all the challenges that go along with that. But I was widowed in my 40s, and I'd been a stay-at-home mom. I had two boys.
I was widowed in my 40s. Something we have in common.
Exactly, we do. And I went back to university then and became a teacher and taught elementary school for a few years. That's still, I'm butting in and saying that, but that really at the time didn't have anything to do with me becoming a writer, because it was still 20 years later that writing came into my life. But I know that those experiences definitely color the subject matter that I write about. And most of my protagonists are women in, over 50, over 60. I have some characters. I have one character who's in her 90s. And so certainly life experience comes into everything that we put into our books, wouldn't you say, ladies?
Oh, I would piggyback right on that. I think that for me, I always felt that writing was really my first voice. I always think that I'm far better. If we were typing this to each other, I would sound much better than orally. There's something about that connection to writing, that little speed that goes on in your head and then comes out the end of your fingers. In my book, my youngest character is 15, but my oldest is 94. And I think for me, the reason I created that scenario is because I felt I was aging out. I used to think I actually created that term, and somebody told me I hadn't. But I felt I was, I wasn't a full-time mom anymore because I had adult children. I wasn't married at the time. My parents were deceased. And even though I'm a pretty authentic person, and what you see is what you get, I didn't know who I was going to be without the role of educator, the role of mom, daughter, etc. So for me, I began to play out what that would look like through writing, and that's how it transformed into a book. But it's what Patricia was saying in terms of that getting to a certain point, and I think for me at least, becoming much more comfortable in myself and realizing that all of our stories matter in very profound ways.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. That's a very good point. Very good point. Liza, what about you?
Well, I started in the early 80s. My first job out of college, I went to graduate school for fashion in New York, and I worked for Ralph Lauren for several years. And that was my dream career. But it really burned me out. And so from there, I moved to the island of Nantucket, where I had an antique shop for 7 years and one marriage. And then since then, I married again, moved to Virginia, raised my daughter and stepchildren. And it wasn't until I was 53 and my youngest went to high school that I had the opportunity to do something more that took more creative thought than making a child's mermaid costume. And so I decided to go back to school and study literature just for myself. So I signed up at my local community college, and I had to meet with this very young advisor. And she said, "Mrs. Taylor, do you want to take this course for credit, or do you just want to audit?" And I was like, audit my ass. So right then I decided that I was going to get another degree in English. And that morphed into me taking my first creative writing course and then applying for an MFA program. And it was really the applying to the MFA program that made me realize that I was at the age of 56 going to invest money and time and pursue this and see where it would lead me. And, and here I am. So yeah, I love hearing you all's stories.
I do too. And we're getting comments about how inspiring these stories are. I know lots of folks are kind of like me. We're all going, how do we do it? How do we do it? And we're going to start picking and choosing paths that you ladies went down. We're going to find one that works for us in here. We've got such, we got similarities here. Liza's similarity with Julie here, fashion degree, high pressure job in New York City, moved to Virginia, married to a Virginia man. You
Julie, friend me.
I know. It's like, hello, similar life path. Oh, look, and Annie's throwing in her information there too. Look at this. And all these people. Annie too. I mean, gosh, lots of similarities. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I didn't start in the right field. I should have started in fashion. Is that what happened? I don't know. It worked out for Patricia and Grace. They were teachers too. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
Absolutely.
So,
And
Sandell, tell us. Oh, go ahead, Patricia. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say to Sandell, actually, that because most of my books are set in the south of France, and my husband and I have spent time there every year for the last 20 years, when Annie first told me your story and about your experience and how your story evolved, I was absolutely fascinated. And I can't wait to hear you talk more about that.
Well, thank you so much, Patricia. As for how I became a writer, I think I've told this, Nola, on the second line. I'm not sure that I just really basically fell into it. I loved writing. I taught writing. I was a language arts teacher, and I had no idea that actually it was in the 60s when my children were in school in Wadeland, Massachusetts, that James Moffat was doing his research for his child-centered language arts curriculum. And the school that my kids went to was an experimental school for him. And so when I became a teacher, my concentration was in writing. I had no intention of becoming a writer, but I was in middle age in the 80s, Liza, when you were like, and that's when I went back to school for a Master of Arts in Liberal Studies. And that's where I actually became a writer. And about France and the book, I received a fellowship from the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, which owns a facility in a village in France called Auvillard. And I went there coming off of what I consider my failed memoir. And I also have about 4 failed novels on the shelf. And it was like, done. No more long stuff. I'm writing short. So my intention was to write a series of essays about this village and their World War II history. And I started researching, and I found the name, a friend actually, Marilyn Khaled, a wonderful poet, gave me the name of a boy who was 9 years old, and he was a resistance courier during the Second World War, and he and his family lived in the village. And so everything just sort of snowballed from there, and I actually found him, but he was not very forthcoming or willing to speak with me. And a dear friend introduced me to Germaine Polyakov, who was 92 when we met. And she was a caretaker in a secret house that protected Jewish refugee children in a village called Bouillé-sur-Dordogne. And so I'm in this memoir, I'm telling the stories of these women, Germaine and Yvonne, who was a child in that house. I'm researching the village, and I'm also on my own spiritual journey. And I just followed where it was leading me. I was in my 70s when I began this project, and I think I felt like I was in my 20s.
That's amazing. I mean, it's such a great story.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard it before, but I'm like hanging on every word again, because it's what an amazing chain of events that led to something so special, and what a life adventure as well. I mean, it's a great story, and it's a fantastic memoir, but it's also what a great life experience, and that what a story to tell. Just to say, I have done this, and I followed those breadcrumbs. I made that happen. I got that story that I wanted. And there's got to be some tremendous just satisfaction, personal satisfaction in knowing that you were able to do all of that and find that special story that was meant for you. And I think so many times the stories that find us for a reason. We were the ones that were meant to tell it, whatever that story is. And of course, Cassandra, your book that you've just put out, of course, that was the story that you were meant to tell. It is, the love that you knew, the man that you knew, the relationship that you had, the story was meant for you. And it's special that you can share that story with others as well. So what brought you, obviously, Pat being part of your story as a writer, but you were writing before then as well. So
yeah,
you have your own journey aside from Pat and Pat's writing journey, which I think is wonderful that you have your story too.
I like to say as well, Nola, what you just said is that I don't think, and this is what I would tell my students a lot when I was teaching writing, is I don't think we have to look for stories. I think they find us when they are meant to, and I don't know if the rest of you have had this experience, but I bet you have, in that there have been books that I wanted to write that I just couldn't get. I mean, I would think they sounded like a great idea. It was something that inspired me or that I heard about, someone's story or whatever. And it just, it wouldn't come. I couldn't really tell it. And I finally had, and I'd get so frustrated that I kept trying to push it, until, I learned, one of the things that I've learned in my career is, that they're going to find us. And when the time is, or when we're ready to tell this story, and when the story is ready to be told. When in my previous life before Pat, with my starter husband, I was
your starter husband.
For 2 decades,
Give that phrase. Give her credit for that phrase every time you use it, ladies. And I know we will be using it from here on out.
We know where it came from.
I've had one of those.
I was not only that, he was a preacher. So,
Sounds like there's a book there.
There is. I wrote it. This was my second novel because I had been taking notes on this experience, journaling and so forth. Just saying, I'll never write this story because it's too personal. It's too painful. I have to show a side of myself that I don't like. I had to explore my own spiritual journey and the doubts and all, and the failure of a marriage. If I told our story, as such, but it wouldn't leave me alone. I mean, it was something I was writing in secret for years, but after my first book, it wouldn't leave me. I had to do that story, and I did it. I called it The Sunday Wife, and it became my second novel. So it was based on life experiences, as was the next book I wrote about a group of friends that we made friends in college, and all that we have gone through in all our years together, and we call ourselves the Same Sweet Girls. So that was my third book, and so on. So yeah, once I started, I couldn't stop.
I love it when that happens too. Yeah, and I love how you said that the story is going to happen. I said it's going to come to you because it's supposed to be there, but I love how you added when it's supposed to be told too, because I honestly think that our life experiences, we put them into what we write. We obviously are going to leave some of ourselves on the pages of the manuscript. And so sometimes we ourselves are not ready to write that story, and we need to grow as a person before we can bring the depth to the story that it actually deserves. And I think that is one of the wonderful things about women writers who do come to this a little later in life. You have brought so much life experience, not only your own, but friends, family, people, loved ones that you've drawn from their wisdom, their experiences, their trials, their successes, their loves, their losses, all of these things you can build on that. Younger writers may be imagining that. And I love that there are so many characters in your books for people at different stages in their lives to identify with, so that readers that are in that second half of their lives and they're finding themselves again. And so many people do that, don't they? And once you're on your own again, your children have left the nest, you're an empty nester again, you and your spouse have to find yourselves. You've lost a spouse, you're finding out who you are again without those other people in your life. And it's an interesting transition. And how wonderful it is that we can have authors who can create those characters and those stories that we can then relate to in that part of our lives and draw strength and courage from. So as you're putting those things into the pages, what does that do for you as a person? Is it therapeutic for you? I mean, Cassandra, you said that you had to face some things, and in putting those things,
it was very difficult, very and at times painful, and I would catch myself trying to glamorize it or make it not so, and that didn't work. So it's a soul searching sort of journey.
And I think the journey is better for it too. And, for not only yourself, but also for the reader when it is a little bit more real. There's nothing more disappointing in getting into a book and the situation is glamorized. It is dressed up and you're going, okay, but that's not how life works. Sometimes we want those stories and we need those stories. But when we come to authors like you all, we are looking for the heart of it. And it does take that soul searching, that realness to bring the heart of these relationships and these people to life. So how does that feel for you as you sit down and write, as a writer, as you're pouring that onto a page?
Nola, you talked about a couple of things there that I think are important. And it's that sense of, yes, we bring ourselves, but we also get to explore who we might want to be. We get to, if we have younger characters, in some ways, at least for me, I can address a younger version of myself. And I like playing with that piece of the writing puzzle. And the other thing I think about being an author at this age and a novelist at this age is I've learned to listen a lot better, and I think that the listening has made me a better author. It gives me better stories, right? So I can eavesdrop as much as I want on other people's conversations and weave those in. So it makes me hear more stories. But I think there's something about the authors here and the pieces that I've read that feel most authentic is when we've listened really well and we've captured that without always dressing it up. I don't know if the other women feel that way.
Well, Grace, it's really interesting to hear you use that word, because I think it's until I found my authenticity that I really didn't find my subject and how to write. I turned into a memoirist because I had written some successful essays. And right now, I almost think I could turn back into a fiction writer and do a lot better job. But I'm loving that form, and I'm loving being able to put who I am on the page, because growing up as a very assimilated Jewish child and then Jewish woman, and really when I began writing, I didn't write any Jewish characters, and it was almost as if there was a screen between me as the writer and my characters. There was something that was holding me back. And when I did create a Jewish character in my fiction at that time many years ago, I'd had teachers who said to me, "Take it out. Don't. It's not authentic, or it's not universal. You don't. You need to be universal." So it's been a kind of rough road for me through the years, and I love the fact that things have changed so much, and I love the fact that there are so many women who are no longer afraid to tell their stories, and in so many ways.
Yes, Sandell, I agree with you. I'm not Jewish, but I understand what you're saying. I think we all have what I think of as an emotional file cabinet, and at our age, we have a lot more files in that cabinet, and I mine them. I'm sure we all do, for the the emotional, real heart of our writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because we're the age we are, maybe we have fewer F's to give, but we have a lot more files in that cabinet. And maybe we can look at them with sort of a benevolent detachment and be kinder to our younger selves, and use those experiences of my first heartbreak, the best, the first time I got my first job, all of those things, I think consciously or subconsciously, they translate into our writing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
absolutely.
I agree. I'm looking forward to having more of those files to pull from. And as much as there's so much inspiration here. And, I'll say I'm 45 years old. And so I've kind of reached that point. My youngest is in high school, kind of like where you were, Liza. And it's like my youngest is in high school. And I'm kind of looking forward as, what is life going to look like for me in 3 years from now, when there isn't somebody to apply for college, there's somebody needs, this, I've got to go run them here, we've got this thing to do. And it's just sort of me, how am I going to look back on those years that I had, all of those life lessons that I was learning, all of those things, and what is that going to do to shape the next thing that I write? My characters tend to be younger. And so, but I like writing kind of the older figures as well. And so I kind of see that shift as I get to that different stage in my life. Those things are going to be more meaningful for me. Those are the characters that I'm going to connect with more as a writer too. But I love that you said you can then address your younger self in those younger characters too, and say, you know what? It's okay to have that heartbreak. You can cry, honey, but pick yourself up by the bootstraps and keep on marching. Because this is what we do. We don't sit in a puddle and sob ourselves into for the next 20 years. It's just not going to happen. You got to do something. You sit down and cry. Fine.
And sometimes we can rewrite it with a better ending.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So you don't do the next stupid thing. You have time then to think it through and not do the next stupid thing. You can, pick one stupid thing at a time. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I did a lot of dumb things, snap decisions. So you didn't quite think through, go give somebody a piece of your mind, say something you were going to regret. I mean, all of those cliches that we always say, okay, you shouldn't have done that. And, you're going to regret that when you're a little older. You're going to look back on that. And people do. My students today, we had an in my day moment. And in fact, they labeled it that in the chat in the Zoom this morning. And so I realized that I was quickly becoming one of those people. And I was aging myself way out of my students here because they were talking about video games. And I said, they were talking about all these games. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
I had my brother had a Nintendo. We played Super Mario Brothers and Zelda. And one of my kids in the chat went, "An in my day moment."
That's so
I
good.
started talking like a little old woman for a little while.
Yeah.
All the horror stories about in my day. But I was like, oh gosh, I've just totally done that. I am that person. I've gotten to that point in my life now where I'm going to start having in my day moments. So clearly, I'm getting to that point where I'm going to have files to start pulling from, to more files. So, especially when my students can actually label that an in my day moment. And in all caps. I was like, why did you put that in all caps? Do we really need to draw attention to that? So, I mean, for me, sitting here with all of you, and I know our viewers in the comments are saying some of the same things, that these stories are, and your stories of how you got here, how you decide what to put into your writing, are inspiring to both writers and readers to know what's going into it. And, you know, how much of your life was dedicated to building you up to that point. And I think that's something that maybe people don't realize, is that all of that is kind of like that big snowball, and it's gathering up to that moment. And, you know, Annie asked a great question. She said, you know, do you wish that you started publishing books sooner? Would you turn back the clock and actually pull that part of your timeline back some to a younger you? Or is that something that you feel age and wisdom were kind of necessary for? Or do you wish that you had more time with this particular life that you have now?
Well, it's a great question. Trust Annie to ask it.
Of course.
Yeah. And I know, you know, she and I've talked about that briefly. And personally, I don't think I could have started writing any sooner. I mean, I had a very full life. I was busy doing, you know, this and that and whatever. And it had never occurred to me to write novels. And so I think when it did happen, it was the right time. And I couldn't have told my stories or keep telling the stories I'm telling now any sooner. So for me, it just, you know, it just happened when the time was right. And sure, I look at younger authors and I envy them all the years, all the decades that they have ahead of them to keep writing. And I just tell myself, okay, I got a lot of decades left too. And that's just the way it is.
It's interesting, Annie, you asked that question. I was just talking with actually a high school friend on the phone before before this program, and he and I were talking about that very subject, and I said that at this moment in my life, this is the greatest gift I could have received. To publish my debut novel, I'm 82 today, a year ago at 81.
Wonderful.
A world
Amazing.
opened up to me. And I am very grateful for that. Do I envy the younger writers? Yes. Would it have occurred to me to be a writer in the days when I was born? No, because you had to have been a man, really, unless you were highly, highly, highly unusual. And when I, you know, was in high school, we read Emily Dickinson. And I think that was pretty much it. College, it was Jane Austen and all of that, but not until then. And so yes and no to the question.
Perfectly acceptable answer. That's a good one. What about you, Cassandra? We'll go backwards in our Brady Bunches. Going in reverse.
I'm kind of, you know, the same way. I do regret. I have some regrets about not giving myself permission to you know, nurture that part of myself, and I spent a lot of time, because my generation of women, you want to write, that's such a sweet little hobby for you, you know. You could do the church devotional, you know, which I did plenty of them.
I feel like you're getting that little pat. Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, bless her heart, as we say in the deep South, right, Cassandra? Bless your heart.
So yeah, I have some regrets, but I still, you know, I don't know what I would have written then. Maybe some of the stories that I wrote, I would have expanded them or whatever. But I think everything pretty much happened the way it was to be.
I think that's so far, just based on what you write and what everybody here writes, I can absolutely see, your answers make perfect sense to me, each and every one of you. Just knowing what you have published and what your inspirations are and what you're bringing to your work. That makes absolute sense. Grace, what about you? As we reverse our Brady Bunch.
I would say the same. I would say the same yes and no. My first book came out over 20 years ago. And although it's about education, I was lucky enough to work in 32 states. So I always gathered stories. It goes back to that listening thing that I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. So there's always stories of the educators that I worked with that are woven into that. But again, I think the world of being a novelist, I wasn't ready. I was ready to steal other educators' stories and to weave them into a solid book. But in terms of finding my voice, which is something I really love listening to my fellow authors here about really finding our voice. And I think bringing a unique perspective to women's literature, particularly. What I do envy the younger authors with is just their ability to have grown up in social media. And something I shunned. And, I still feel so inept so often in this world. So if there was something going back, I wish I had understood how important it was to the publicizing part of our work, and also the joy of talking about our work. Mm-hmm. So that I wish I had gotten on a lot earlier. But I agree with Cassandra and the others. It happens when it's supposed to happen.
Liza. Liza. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And back at you, Nola, as they used to say at my all women's college, bless your heart and how's your cute mama? So, but exactly what Grace said, writing found me at the right time. It wouldn't have worked earlier. It didn't occur to me earlier. I was 53 when I wrote started my first novel. And I just feel like I was blessed that I had this time and this inspiration, and it started to sort of fall into place. And now I can't imagine doing anything else. And I fully intend to keep on with this. And I do envy younger writers, number one, they're tighter skinned, but also just,
I just keep all those years up. That's how it, I keep filling it out from the inside, and I find that works for me.
But it's, I feel really fortunate to have something at the age of 61 that inspires me and fills my day with waking up and thinking, this is going to happen today. And I have had a really hard time learning to be the social media presence of learning the technology and getting over my personal anxiety issues of being the center of attention. And that's really been a nice byproduct of all of this, is that if you'd asked me in high school, would I ever try to be in the school play? Hell no. But now, I don't know. Going back to my earlier point, I think we just don't care as much, or we don't care if we have a few wrinkles and we're on the camera, whatever. I think it's great to find whatever inspires us at whatever age. And I'm about to be a grandma next month, and so maybe that'll be my next thing. I don't know, wonderful. But so
you can give them back.
Yeah, I'm working on the children's book now, actually, and so it's wonderful, and I love hearing everybody's stories about how they came here and what's ahead.
I am inspired by all of you, and I hope one day. I mean, I love teaching. I love what I do, and I enjoy the kids. But there are so many times that I really wish I could wake up in the morning and dedicate my entire day to what I love to do most. And it's fun for me to be able to share that journey with my kids, with my students, because a lot of them don't realize that books don't just magically appear on shelves. Mm-hmm. So I get to give them that author's peek behind the scenes of how this process works. And when my debut book was coming out, it was an interesting story to share with them. And, the cover reveal was coming. Here's the cover reveal. Here's the press release. This is going out. This is what we're doing. I've got my first round of edits. What does that mean, Miss Nash? That means that I've got to do this. Now I've got to send it back to them. They're like, when does this book come out? It's like, hey, it's not just I wrote the end and now I turn it over to people and they start printing it. That's not how it works. And so it's interesting to be able to share that side of things with my students. And so I appreciate the overlap in the careers in that way. But for so much of getting started writing, and the day that I put the first word down, it was like, this is what I want to do. And I think it's because those stories continue to find me, and I feel like I have to get them on paper to get them out of my head so that there's room for other things. And it becomes too cluttered, too many voices in there talking to me at the same time, got to get them out. And, I would love if those were the only voices I had to listen to all day instead of, just Zooming with kids and other things. I like being an online teacher. I don't have to deal with nearly as much drama. That helps. Let me tell you, there is some drama in 8th grade. Y'all think back to 8th grade.
Right.
Yeah. I don't understand how people write books. I have a lot of YA author friends, and I don't know how they spend so much time with their younger selves. Talk about younger selves. They're going way back to middle school. I would not want to spend that much time with my younger self, not that younger self, much less all the younger selves that I see around me every day in the building to write middle grade fiction and YA fiction. I am in awe of them. And, that's an experience that I'm going to let them keep. But I look at all of you and I think, these are women who have had careers, they've been successful, they've had families, they have raised them, they've done their thing as women and made their choices and have settled on this choice for themselves that now gives to so many. And what an amazing place to be. And I have to tell you, I'm very jealous. Now, I will tell you, as a younger author, coming into this game a little, and I was clearly a middle-aged author when I started too. I mean, let's face it, my book was 2019. I was 43 when that book launched. So we'll call me middle-aged when I got started too.
Just a child.
Just a child. Just a child. Hardly. I would love to say that, but my students remind me frequently in all caps that that's not the case. But I will say that one of the things that I face too is, I've written these books, I've published these books, and yet I still have so many years in front of me, and I look at it as an opportunity, but also daunting in a way. It's, if I've done this, how do I not become that one-trick pony? How do I continue to do what I want to do and have people want to read what I want to write? And so there is some intimidation in that, knowing you have more years ahead of you that you want to fill with what you love, and are hoping that there are people out there for that length of time that are going to support you and allow you to continue to do that. Mm-hmm. And so there's kind of a double-edged sword there. There's the wishing for more time when you started later. And then there's I have to continue this. I want to continue this. And can I continue this? A doubt that also settles in the minds of a younger author as they're starting and getting out there. Is this a career I can continue to pursue? Will it sustain? I guess this is really the main thing.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point, Nola. Really,
it's a tough one. I mean, I struggle with that all the time. I mean, I've got books up there that I'm querying right now, and I'm going, what if this is it? That's it. Wrote a couple of scary books. I'm done. But nobody wants them. And then what do I do? Who am I? So you start to worry about that. And so it is an interesting juxtaposition to be in both positions, I suppose. So it was an excellent question that Annie asked, and looking at it from your perspective and then kind of thinking back to me and how I've thought about that time and what I would have done with it. I think, honestly, if I had started any younger, I wouldn't have told as good a story. I feel like, I had a story that I wrote many years ago, probably 10 years ago, that lacked a lot because I lacked the experience that was needed to really bring those characters to life. Mm-hmm. I needed the life experiences. I needed that. And so I rewrote that book, and it's much better for it. Much better for it. And so sometimes time is exactly what you need. and the stories will absolutely find you. Annie is saying that she was wanting to call this show The Eves after Grace's book, because it is all about women who are sharing their stories in that later part of their lives. And so in many ways, that is you guys. You are the group of the Eves sitting right here.
There you are. Well,
It's an amazing group of people, an amazing company to be in. And you are inspiring lots of people. Absolutely inspiring people. Let's see. Sylvia, you had a question? What is your greatest? Oh, hang on. I got to read it bigger. Intention. When you, sorry, my new glasses. I'm working on my prescription didn't work. And so now my students would then have a comment about this. No comments, people. My children every day make a comment about my glasses. What is your greatest intention when you begin writing a book? So when you sit down and you say, this is the story I'm going to tell, what is the intent behind it? Is it to reach people of a certain age, to inspire, to pull on heartstrings, to get something emotionally worked through for yourselves and hope that it will help others? There's so many intentions that we can bring to the work that we do. When you sit down to start a new project, what intention do you bring to it? This is where your wisdom comes in. These are the words that we want to hear. And I'll let you simmer with that for a moment, because I think it's a good question, especially when you're talking to authors who have started a bit later in their lives. The intention that younger authors bring to the story that they want to tell may be very different from the intention that a more mature author would bring to their work.
sure.
I'm not going to say older. That's not nice.
Well, I would just say that sometimes no matter what our intention at the beginning, it sometimes changes, or at least I find that's my experience. It sometimes changes as the story evolves and as it comes to life on the pages and through your words and through your characters. Sometimes things happen to completely change the intention that you began with.
I love it when that happens to a story. That's special when the story takes on a life of its own. Annie says that your intention is to take her to France.
That is definitely.
My intention is to come along.
There you go.
All right, let's go.
Working up a girls trip right
Yes,
now.
let's do it.
I'm on.
Start calling the travel agents as soon as the borders open up. We're out of here.
You got that right. But what did the rest of you think about intention?
So I don't really sit down with an intention to write a certain story. I think that I sit down to write about something that interests me, but the intention is built into who I am, because I think all of us find that we're still basically addressing the same themes. I wrote about a village in France and World War II. I'm now writing a memoir about raising or helping to raise my granddaughter, who his mother abandoned her, and her mother is Korean. So I'm addressing many of the same issues. I'm addressing race. I'm addressing bias. I'm addressing mothering. I'm addressing being a woman. I'm addressing being a girl. All of the same themes appear in all of my work, no matter how different they are. I think the story is a vehicle for your intentions.
I think that's a great way to put it. And you guys have got, the phrases are so good. I really wish I had been sitting here writing them all down. It's like I have all these things. Cassandra, you said something earlier and I was like, I was going to write it down. I had no paper.
Well,
that was perfect. Whatever you said was perfect. I'm going to have to go back and watch this again so that I can get to that. I go, that was the best way to say that.
Yeah, starter husband.
I love the vehicle.
It was starter husband. That was the one for me.
There was something after that too. I mean, she said several things. I'm like, I'm going to write this down. Starter husband definitely is going to be my new thing. Oh, Echo Garrett is here. So thank you, Echo, for joining us. And yes, the story that guides us. When the story guides us, I believe that those are some of the best stories that are told. And I think, Cassandra, you said something about basically struggling against a story that didn't want to be told yet, and then having to give it permission. That's what it was. You said give yourself permission to do things when they need to be done, and to know when it's the right time to do something, just giving yourself that permission. And I think that's something that as women, maybe we struggle with that a little bit. Maybe that is a commonality, is giving ourselves permission to follow those dreams, to do what we know we need to do, whether it is to scrap a manuscript altogether, start over, put it aside for a while, like the one that got away from me. And I'm going, nope, this isn't good. It's, that's a lesson that we have to learn, is to give ourselves permission to do what we feel is in our hearts are right for the work that we're trying to do. So that was the point that I was trying to remember, Cassandra, because it was a very good point that you made. So what else? What other intentions are you bringing to your work? I mean, I know I didn't actually start off with the intention to terrify people, but it seems to be what I did with those first 2 books. I will tell people that was not my intention. I'm sorry. I wanted to give you the creeps a little bit. Scaring people to death.
I think we all
lights on was not that.
I think we all know, probably want to transport our readers, right? We want to be able to put them in either a different situation or a situation that transports them to a place where they want to read that next page, where they're going to be taught. For me, I really want it to be a conversation starter. Annie knows I have these little conversation cards that I have nothing to do with the book, but have the importance of that we need to listen. I go back to that. But what are the conversations? That's why I love book clubs so much and participating in them. What are the tangential things outside of the story that touch our readers' hearts and really begin to change the fabric of who we are? So there's something in my writing that makes people want to stay in that story, but also wants them to connect with another reader to say, this somehow changed me. Whether it's my perspective on, Sandell was talking about whether it's race or age or gender. How did this story change me? Part of me always wants to accomplish that.
I think it's a great intention.
Yeah.
Very much so. Liza, what about you?
Well, I can't say that I could sit down and say, here is my intention in capital letters. I've decided in the 2 books that are being published, and the one I'm working on now, that I choose a time in history, and then I start doing research, and I have an idea of my character. And then in each case, I have had what I call an Easter egg fall into my lap, some event in history that I didn't know about that I think is really interesting. And once you go down that rabbit hole, other things open up, and your plot can be guided by those or be written around those things. But I found characters and events that really, through history, because I write historical fiction, that have really led me down a path. And I've learned to trust that process, even though every time I've started a book, I haven't known how it was going to end until I was halfway through or 3/4 of the way through. And so I've learned to let research lead me and guide me. But there's a fine line there, because once you go down those rabbit holes, you can get lost for days, right? On Pinterest or whatever. But yeah, I've learned to sort of trust that I start out with a vague intention and guide myself through research. And then I let the story go and the characters go to where they end up to the right place, till we find the right place.
I like it when that happens too. When you let the book tell itself and you become the channel as opposed to the captain. And, I always love channeling a book through my fingers as opposed to saying, here's where we're going. I think that rigidity oftentimes, it works for some people, but for me, I find that as I'm researching something, because mine are historical fiction as well. And so as I'm researching something, so often it's that little gem of something that was unexpected. And that if I've allowed the parameters of the story to be flexible enough to allow those gems to work their way in, then it's a better story for it.
Yeah,
and
for
I
sure.
love those moments that you can actually work that in and go, oh, I have a perfect place for that. I can do this. But yes, I'm with you. I will start researching something. I'll look up and it's midnight and I'm going, dang, I was just looking for the right word for whatever.
Yeah.
No, but there's definitely
This is
there's something woo-woo magical when that happens. You know, when a character comes knocking in your head and won't go away, or you stumble upon something that just turns your whole story on its axis and you know it's the right direction. That's a great feeling.
Mm-hmm. Cassandra, what about you? As far as intention go, now you've told us a little bit about the kind of the soul searching of your starter husband, and then your story about Pat. So,
well, yeah, I think intention in sort of both of those cases was a journey of self-discovery for me, the writer. And it was as I developed the story that I began to understand more about myself and the relationship that brought this story about, and and why I wanted to share it. And I think part of the reason that I have wanted to share the stories that I've shared has to do with a feeling that this is a commonality. This is something that my readers would connect with, and but then there's also, as all of you I think was saying, this also you want to be surprised. You want to have new experience. You want to say, well, I've never had that experience before, but this is how we learn empathy, of course, but I can see what that would be like. I've never been an immigrant, but I read a story about an immigrant, and that, and it gave me a whole different perspective and so forth. So I don't sit down either with a definite intention, except to tell a story and to go wherever it leads me, and with whatever insights along the way come from it. Whatever questions aren't always answered, but they're raised. The questions are raised. Yeah.
Questions that are raised that allow the reader to sit with them for a while after the last page of the book is turned, or some of the best. And the empathy, I love the idea of empathy, being able to build our own empathy because of what we read, the experiences of the characters in the book, especially when they are authentic experiences, and we do get to the the not glossed over, the grittiness, the real experiences of people that allow us to see different perspectives and to appreciate them. We always say that somebody who reads a book lives 1,000 lives, and so it gives you that opportunity to do that. I mean, of course, there's the famous To Kill a Mockingbird, never judge a man until you've walked around in his shoes. And so you get the opportunity to do that in the characters of well-written books that really bring people's real lives and their real experiences, not just glossed over happily ever afters, which sometimes we need that. Sometimes our souls just need to know that it's going to end happily, and that's what we need to spend that time on. Other times, it is good to have that soul searching that a good book leaves you with as well. And I love that there's so much variety out there for readers, and that we can pick up a book and have any number of experiences because of the craft and the time and the effort and the work and wisdom that so many authors have put into the pages of their books. And you ladies are prime examples of those things. And your work is all different. And that's one of the things that I hope that people understand and get from all of you as they are watching this and listening to all of you talk, that your books are very different. They have commonalities, common threads, but at the same time, there's something here in this collection of work among the 5 of you that will definitely resonate with someone. You know, that style of writing, the subject matter, there's something here for every reader. And what a great example of talent and purpose and just great writing. That's a celebration of Women's Month. And you guys have been truly, truly an inspiration to so many of us here. We are so grateful that you have chosen to spend part of your afternoon, evening, your 5 o'clock somewhere, 4 o'clock tea, whatever we're doing. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I know we've got so many viewers and comments here. Great comments. We have not gotten to all of them. And I always say that it's a good thing that we do have time after this show to go back and look at some of these comments and really interact with the folks who were here. There are some great things that I wish that we had time to address and to put on the screen. We've talked about so many great things. And ladies, I do hope that you'll be able to go see all of the wonderful inspiration that you have brought to the viewers of our program today. And again, we are thankful to Annie McDonald and of course the Right Review for hosting these wonderful ladies. I am grateful for the opportunity to have had the time to chat with you in Annie's absence. And it has just truly been a joy and a blessing to get to know all of you and to continue to connect with some dear friends as well. So thank you so much, ladies. It has been truly a joy. I appreciate everything that you guys are putting out there for all of us and the inspiration that there is time to do whatever we set our hearts to. And that in itself is what I hope that a lot of people will take from this and from you. So you're amazing.
Exactly.
We appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you
Thank you, Nola.
and Annie at the
Thanks, Annie.
And
Thanks,
Annie.
Nola.
Thank you.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Thanks
for
to
joining.
everyone who was watching.